Phil Spector's like, we need 6 horses and 6 whips. We go get the exact same time.
42 takes.
And I'm going to put a gun to each of their heads during the entire take of the song so they shut the fuck up because they're only at the beginning and the end.
Ho, 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 and welcome to a very special episode of 1001 Album Complaints. This is the podcast where lifelong friends, musicians, and people who take the Festivus airing of grievances a bit too far get together to talk about albums from Robert Dimery's list of 1001 albums you must hear before you die. Now, we are going to give some background on the artist leading up to the recording of this album, talk a bit about each of the songs that we have put on our focus list to do a deep dive on, complain a whole hell of a lot. So if this is your first time hearing this show, be warned, we will be poking some fun at this artist, at this album, at really the producer who's kind of the main guy on this one, because while we all love and respect music and anyone who is willing to go out there and put themselves and their ideas on tape, we all agree there is a lot to make fun of. And once we are done getting our cheap shots in, we are going to vote and tell you whether or not you really do need to hear this album before you die. Now, as what might even say is a special Christmas gift for you from 1001 Album Complaints, we have decided to forego our normal process of randomly selecting an album, and this week we are going to be covering an album from renowned producer and crazy person Phil Spector. It is the November 22nd, 1963 release, A Christmas Gift for You from Phillies Records. Now, to give you an idea of what we have been listening to this week, we are going to play a little clip from one of the first tracks on this album. It's a song that you may have heard before, at least in various iterations. This is Frosty the Snow.
I hope there's at least one person.
Yeah, lucky for them. And I'm sorry if we just introduced you to this for the first time. Now, by way of an introduction to our cast of complainers, I am going to throw it around the room, and they are going to give their particularly mean tweet-length review. I am going to throw it first over to Adam.
Hey, everybody, this is Adam, and an album that's cooler than the North Pole. It's Snow Joke that I fell in love with this week. And I think that you'll love this album as well, because let's be honest, it slays.
Oh,
terrible. Terrible. I love it.
Well done, Adam. Well done. All right, Marty, what do you got for us?
I think that just ruined my holidays. You know, this week I'm just looking forward to a nice, comforting, warm discussion about the holidays and an album made by a guy who, hold on, let me check my notes, shot a woman directly in the face.
Oh my God.
Nice and wholesome. Nice and wholesome. All right, Rob, what do you got for us?
Thanks, Tom. Excited to get into it. And, society should have known that only a deranged lunatic would even attempt to make Christmas music sound.
And fail at it. But no spoilers on our general impressions here. And I am Tom. I will be taking you on this sleigh ride through the life and career of one Phil Spector, who is the driving force behind this album.
I mean, you could say that Phil Spector went on his own sleigh ride, right?
My tweet length review, and listen, I will fully admit that I am no detective, but this week in my research, I think I may have cracked this case wide open. While hanging out with Lana Clarkson, Phil Spector said, "Hey, do you want to listen to an album of Christmas songs?" And Lana said, "Jesus Christ, just fucking shoot me."
Oh my God.
Oh, spoiler alert for the story coming up. It is not all chestnuts and popcorn in front of a roaring fire.
And mulled wine.
Let's get into our general impressions of this album. Gentlemen, how was your week?
Of all the beginning to end Christmas albums that you can think of, this has to be the easy one to listen to from beginning to end.
Well, there is Vince Guaraldi's Charlie Brown's Christmas. That's definitely better than this.
But it's just that one song, right? Over and over again?
No, it's an entire song, including songs that he penned, like Christmas Time Is Here.
Okay.
I got to tell you, I actually hate the cool version of Christmas music so much more than the like shitty, chintzy, old like Burl Ives versions of Christmas music. Like I can
Give me
I
the
can
corny,
stomach that.
yeah.
This trying to take it into the modern era, and yes, by modern era I mean 61 years ago. It's not doing it for me, and I had kind of a nightmare of a week, if I'm being honest.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So nostalgia wins this week for me. I loved listening to all these on repeat. And it's even a bit early too when we're recording this. Usually I'm a bit curmudgeon-y and I don't like my Christmas songs to start until after Thanksgiving. But we spun it up early this week in our household and I loved it. Loved it.
So Adam, this is telling me that you never worked in retail, right?
Okay, touche. Yes, that is correct. That is correct.
You can't avoid these songs no matter where you are, you know?
That is true, but try spending an 8-hour shift on your feet with this shit on repeat. Because there's only like 12 songs they keep playing again and again and again.
Yeah, I'm somewhere in between Tom and Adam. I do think this is about as cool as the songs can get. But some of these songs are terrible and extremely overplayed. And I wouldn't say in general I like Christmas music at all. But, you know, there were a couple like minor surprises on here that felt pretty cool and hip to me.
Yeah, try working like retail in the late 90s and hearing Black Hole Sun played like every 3 songs for 8 hours every single day.
Are you working in Hot Topic?
At least Christmas gives you like that nice nostalgic feeling.
Does it though?
Does for me.
You know, and I'm not trying to be too much of a curmudgeon. I've never been a big fan of Christmas beyond from when I was like a child. And I was like, oh, I get a bunch of shit. Basically, as soon as I started earning my own money, I was just like, if I want something, I'm going to buy it. And I feel pretty good about that. And I know that makes me a terrible person with a cold, dead black heart. And I'm willing to own that. That's fine.
But to be clear, Tom was voted most likely to be the Grinch of all our friends. So this is not a huge surprise.
Yes.
Don't you guys think, though, I mean, when you just take a step back from all this, that some of the singing on here, Darlene Love, Ronnie Spector, really selling the songs. You have to give them some credit.
Yeah.
Great voices. Absolutely phenomenal voices. I think, again, their singing styles didn't always work for the material. Like, Ronnie Spector's got like a sultry, sexy voice. And, you know, I don't need a sultry, sexy version of Frosty the Snowman coming at me, you know?
Sure.
That's not fitting the material. Frosty the Snowman is supposed to be cheesy, you know?
Right. But I think they have a head start with Phil Spector's production style because a lot of these kind of arrangements he uses across his catalog, and a lot of them happen to feature like bells and like horse clapping sounds and things that kind of like
yeah, almost like movie soundtrack, like sound effects kind of stuff.
It kind of fits the theme a little bit musically, maybe more so than the sexy singers.
Well, I had never really worked my way through, let's say, an entire Ronettes album or one of these Phil Spector albums that he produced. I've heard the singles, I've heard the hits, but I've never sat down. And I know this album is 38 minutes or something. But even that length of time with the full-on Phil Spector wall of sound, man, it gets exhausting sonically. Yeah. So that was my one complaint, is that it's just a lot.
I'm in the same camp, Adam, and I do think you're right. The wall of sound is really built for the single radio edit kind of approach, and that is mostly what I had heard in my life. And, you know, I'll just flip it again that, like, you mentioned thinking of retail and, of course, thinking of your own Christmases, which I think we're going to talk about a bit. What this weirdly made me think of, roundabout way, was Christmas movies, like John Hughes movies from the 80s. I feel like used a lot of this stuff in the soundtracks. Yeah. And so that's what my brain kept going to, which did have some nice nostalgia for me.
Yeah, fair enough. I'm going to also shock you here. Not a big fan of Christmas movies.
You do have a black heart. My God.
So glad you signed up for this week.
Yeah, well, this is not 1001 album praises. This is 1001 album complaints.
Good point.
So we can talk a little bit about that wall of sound style. We're going to get to it a little bit more in depth, but I do agree that overproduction was kind of a hallmark of Phil Spector's style. And when he nails it, it sounds great. When he doesn't nail it, it sounds cacophonous. I thought there were a couple of songs on this album that sounded a little cacophonous, like just too much shit going on there. Frankly, a lot of it was the percussion I just felt was like overly done on a lot of it. So interestingly, I can kind of blame some of the shittiness of this album on Sonny Bono, who actually plays percussion on a significant portion of the songs on this album. Yes, Sonny Bono was apparently a longtime protege of Phil Spector. And by protege, I mean that he was essentially a paid whipping boy that Phil Spector would ridicule and humiliate for very little money. But Sonny Bono knew that it was an in to get him an ability to have a career in and of himself.
Spector also taught him how to ski, apparently.
Nice.
It's too soon. Too soon. It's been 28 years. Too soon.
Not national icon Sonny Bono. Before we dive into the background on Phil Spector, I do just want to get out there that this story is going to not be super Christmassy. There is a lot of Phil Spector's life involved here. There's a lot of groups in here. We're going to talk about how he got to work with some of these groups as well. But this is not inherently going to be a very Christmassy story. So at various times throughout the episode, we're just going to drop everything and start rapping childhood Christmas memories. And I hope you guys are all ready for a stroll down the, layered traumas and psychoses that have made us into who we are today, as told through the story of one Harvey Philip Spector, who was born December 26th of 1939.
39, Jesus. I mean, I guess that makes sense, but feels like 1,000 years ago. All right.
39 sounds like it was forever ago. But then you also are going to learn about how young Phil Spector was when he was doing all of this stuff. And you're kind of like, damn, dude, like you really shot out of a cannon with your career. So he was born December 26, 1939 in the Bronx in New York. So his father was born Benjamin Spectrus in Russia. His mother was born Bertha Spector with a K, two Russian immigrants in France. And when they moved to the United States, they both decided to anglicize their name to Spector with a C, and their naturalization papers were witnessed by the same person, which has always led Phil Spector to believe that his parents were actually first cousins who were sort of introduced in the New World through familial connections, and that's how they got together.
Jeez.
Wow.
There's no definitive proof that they were actually first cousins, but he is convinced that his parents were first cousins.
Too bad he's not around to go on Finding Your Roots, We can
In the Hannibal Lecter face mask, talking to Henry Louis Gates.
With that gigantic comical afro that he had going on. Oh, my goodness. So, to start off this wholesome Christmas story the right way, when Phil was just 9 years old, his dad commits suicide to escape from his crushing debts.
Jeez.
Now, this is the craziest thing to me. And there's a lot of crazy parts of this story, but it gets pretty crazy pretty early on. He kills himself by running a hose from the exhaust of his car into the window and slowly suffocating himself.
Hey, that's a great way.
He does this on the streets of Brooklyn in broad daylight.
Oh, not in your garage like a normal person.
So like thousands of people walked past him
Oh.
and nobody intervened or anything like that.
Oh.
And
wow.
saw a hose going into the tailpipe of a vehicle and just thought, yeah, that's normal.
Going into the window and a car just filled up with exhaust smoke, and apparently everybody just walked right by him.
Jesus.
Damn.
I felt like that was just like such a classic, like, welcome to New York thing. Like, yeah, just another guy killing himself to escape crushing debts. Welcome to New York. So Phil had apparently worshipped his father, and the death like really affected him. And, his father is buried, and on the grave is inscribed the phrase, "To know him was to love him." And also really impacted Phil's mother. And she decides that they basically have to leave their situation. They got to get out of town. Number one, there's a whole bunch of uncollected debts. Number two, there's a stigma. Everybody in the community knows that your husband killed himself. So she moves to LA with Phil and his older sister for the amazing economic opportunity of working for a seamstress in essentially a sweatshop in LA. So really great start to life so far. You are 13 years old. You're described as a nervous and withdrawn kid. Your dad is dead. And you move away from the only home that you have ever known so that your mom can work a super low-paying job with long hours that barely makes ends meet.
And your parents were cousins.
And your parents were cousins.
Cherry on top. Star on the tree.
It does seem like Phil, kind of tries to make the best of things. And for his bar mitzvah, he is given a guitar. And this literally changes his life. It provides an outlet for him to stand out and be noticed in a positive way by the other kids. So let's talk about some random Christmas memories. What's the best Christmas gift that any of you have ever received? And I'm going to bet it wasn't something as cool as a guitar.
I thought this was like the opposites. I'll tell you maybe the most disappointing gift I was.
Oh, okay.
Even better.
That actually speaks to my outlook a whole lot more.
Okay, good. Yeah. I remember just wanting one thing for Christmas, and that was the game Crossfire.
Oh, you've been caught up in the crossfire.
Yeah.
Totally.
It was a game where you had these little guns that shot little stainless steel marbles at targets on ball bearings that you would try to get them into, your opponent's goal. That's all I wanted. It's probably like $25. But instead, that year, my main gift was a giant bag of plastic army men.
Which is probably like $4.
They didn't articulate, like the arms and legs didn't move. They were on bases, and there's 5 different positions that they would be fixed in, and they weren't even different colors. It was all green.
I feel like young listeners might need to use Toy Story as a reference for this toy, but this was considered a fun toy at some point.
Yeah, exactly. It was that.
It's funny because I feel like we're all a bunch of musicians, but I don't think any of us were ever given a musical instrument for Christmas. I know. Adam?
Yeah. So when I was 10, my father got me a Casio DH100 digital horn. And it was this kind of nebulous, if you Google it, Google Casio DH100.
I'm sure they're $800 now or something.
You can find them now for $250.
Okay.
And I felt terrible because I wasn't really into it. And looking back on it, my dad spent $100 on it in 1990. And we had no money, which is the equivalent of $250, $300 today. And I always felt terrible because it made some noises, but it just sat in a closet. And I remember my dad constantly asking me, he's like, how's that saxophone coming? I haven't heard it. I'm like, yeah, I know you spent a lot of money on it, but.
Wait, so it's an electronic horn? It's a horn.
Yes.
You blow into it.
And you blow into it and there's a speaker in the cone part of the plastic gray saxophone, and it had 10 or 15 buttons on it.
Sort of picturing the goofy thing that Jack Black might have wielded on the Tonight Show.
Yes, totally the boomaphone or whatever that was. It was the old school I think it came out in 88. My dad bought it for me in 1990 when I was 10, and I still have guilt about that. So
your dad is a masochist, by the way, who gives their child a amplified electric noisemaker. It's just run wild. Yes.
On Christmas Day of all things as well.
You see, but that just goes to, I think, what the difference has been between maybe us and a lot of other people that we knew growing up. I had a good friend who, right around the time that I wanted to get into music, he also said he wanted to get into music, and he said he wanted to play the saxophone. I said I wanted to play the guitar, and his parents bought him a saxophone for $1,000. He was an only child. And my parents said, get a fucking job. And so I mowed lawns all summer, and I bought a guitar from a pawn shop. And by the time I had a guitar, he had no interest in the saxophone anymore. It was just not worth it to me
anymore. There it is. Yep.
Didn't earn it,
Yeah, man.
He didn't have those kind of working class roots, where you have to value every little thing that you have. Unlike Phil Spector. who valued that guitar greatly and set himself to learning how to play it. He took some lessons through the school and whatnot, but he was kind of a natural. And from everything that people have said about him from early on, he had the dog ears. He could just tell if something was out of tune. He could, easily learn stuff by ear. He was really a natural. He took to it, and not just on the guitar, but he could sing. He could figure out how to do harmony. He was one of those people, just a very natural ear for it. And so he ends up forming a group in 1957 with some friends called the Teddy Bears. Now, being a naturally gifted musician is one thing, but Phil was that rare combination of both. And by the way, for any confusion, we're not talking about Phil, our sometimes co-host. We're talking about Phil Spector, who had that natural ability and the drive to really, really get good at it. So he was always trying to improve and learn more. And one of the things that he starts doing is he starts going to local recording studios and just hanging around. And being like, can I do odd jobs for you? Anything to sort of get my foot in the door. And he ends up kind of catching the eye of the guy who owns Gold Star Studios in LA. And that is a guy named Stan Ross, who is the owner of Gold Star Studios and also works in the production. Phil Spector, oddly enough, for somebody that as a child was described as very anxious and very nervous, is also apparently very charming. And it'll come up a whole lot in the story. He's charming in the way that a total fucking psychopath is charming.
God. Like serial killer charming?
He can make his personality fit whatever the situation calls for. So if he's trying to charm a powerful person, he figures out what that person wants out of the relationship and he gives that back to them,
I mean, we're kind of being flippant about his downfall, but also, yeah, he was kind of known. It was known that he was insane for a long time, and he just it didn't catch up to him until much later in life, right?
Yeah. Basically, we'll definitely get to it, but he's always been a bit unstable, to say the least, and certainly an egomaniac who loves the attention and has been prone to kind of outbursts of violence at many points throughout his life as well. So anyway, he gets in with Stan Ross, who is the engineer producer at Gold Star Studios. Actually, Gold Star Studios is where this album was recorded, along with many other notable Phil Spector albums, a ton of which are on Dimery's list.
I was going to say Gold Star sounds familiar. I feel like we've mentioned that before somewhere.
Yeah, so it's going to come up a lot. It's actually kind of integral to the story, this Gold Star Studios. So Stan starts schooling Phil in the art of production, and Phil is like, hey, you know what? I got this group, the Teddy Bears. I'm going to pull together my money. I'm going to buy as much studio time as I can get, and we're going to record some singles. And the second one that they record is a Phil Spector penned song called To Know Him Is to Love Him, after the epitaph on his dad's grave. He apparently...
Jesus.
Wow.
Dark.
He said he woke up out of his sleep one night and was inspired to write a song. Ends up calling the lead singer of the Teddy Bears and playing the song for her over the phone. And she's like, yeah, that sounds like a pretty good song. And they go in and they record this song. Now, Phil takes a very strong hand in the arrangement of the song, but he's 17 years old. But he's already stacking
crazy.
A bunch of vocals to try to give it this really rich and full sound. And that song spends 3 weeks at #1 on the Billboard Hot 100 chart in the US and reaches #2 in the UK. 17 years old.
Wow.
And he has written a #1 song.
It's a good song title,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, props to that gravestone engraver.
Exactly. That guy should be getting royalties. But that's most of the song. It's most of the words of the entire song, So that's,
Somebody had to write that, and it has to be thinking about that mailbox money that could be theirs, right?
Yeah, seriously. He's like, no. I said to know him is to love him, not was to love him. It's like the Vanilla Ice. It's not under pressure. We go din, 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 din.
right. There's an extra din in there.
Yeah.
It's just interesting to think that at such a young age, he could figure it out. Or maybe he just got lucky. And then when that hit, he figured out the secret sauce early on of what the next 20 years of like hit singles needed.
I think it's kind of double-sided because I laughed internally when you said taught him the ways of production, which in this era must have been like, I don't know, be good before you get there to the studio. There weren't a lot of options, right?
I think it was, though, a lot of like how to use the equipment.
Right.
Like, this is how you arm a track for recording. This is how you use a patch board and stuff like that.
So being a producer at that moment was much more of a technical job than it was a creative job, right?
Yes. And in fact, a lot of people have credited Phil Spector with being the first like influential producer that actually like substantively changed the baseline material and made it into something different rather than just somebody who's doing sound capture.
Right.
Because again, from like kind of an early age, he's doing a lot of like experimentation in the studio. Gold Star has these echo chamber rooms. And so he would do stuff like he would record a track. He would reamp that track through an amplifier in the echo chamber, record that, and then lay the two tracks on top of each other so that you'd have this like one clean and one echoey track that you could kind of then mix together to get this like really cool blend. And it's like nobody was doing that shit.
That's pretty badass.
More like a Steve Albini and less like a Rick Rubin.
Yeah, he wasn't just do your thing. He was like actually, frankly, he was kind of like a do my thing kind of producer, you know? So listen, tender age of 17, Phil's written a bona fide hit that sells over 1 million copies in its first year of release. I don't have to check my notes. I'm sure everything is just all uphill from here. There's no bumps in the road coming. No, after that success, the Teddy Bears are not able to replicate that in any way, shape, and form. And so Phil breaks up the band pretty quickly after that hit. Basically, when like their next two songs don't also reach number one, he's like, I'm fucking bigger than you now. I'm over this. And he moves on. He's completely impatient.
Oh my God. Yeah. I've moved on after one hit.
But you know what? I'm sorry. Scoreboard. Like, the guy knew what he was talking about.
Yeah, right. Totally. He could back it up.
Yeah. He then goes and gets a job for Trey Studios in LA, which is owned by Lester Sill. Now, Lester Sill is a big player in the music industry. He was the mentor for Jerry Lieber and Mike Stoller, who have come up a million times on this podcast. Lieber and Stoller. They wrote so many goddamn hits. It's insane. They wrote Yakety Yak. They wrote Hound Dog and Jailhouse Rock. They co-wrote Stand By Me with Benny King. Like, they wrote so many songs. They are like first ballot Hall of Fame for the Songwriters Hall of Fame. And while he's working at Trey Studios, Phil is also starting down this path of trying to put together groups.
I was just picturing Lieber and Stoller just stalking graveyards looking for song titles.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. All right, what do you think? I wrote this new song, Died of Consumption in 1874. And they're like, you know what? New York mining disaster of 1920. You know what? We'll sell that one. We'll give that one up. See if anybody wants that one.
It might be one of the most mentioned hit songs on this podcast. And we come back to the New York mining disaster quite often.
All right. So while he's at Trey Studios, Phil starts down this path of what actually led to a lot of the success in his career. And that is like finding and creating groups that he will produce and perform music that he has written for them. So he puts together a group called the Spectors 3, which is a really, really, really stupid name. And I don't understand why he thought that was going to work. That band doesn't have any hits. It's very short-lived, but it does have a vocalist named Annette Marar, who Phil marries shortly thereafter, thus also establishing a pattern of Phil using his position of influence and power to charm a young, hopeful, starting female musician.
Luckily, that's the only time that will have occurred in the history of the music industry. So it's good to write it off now.
Yep. And I think it's also important to note that Phil's hair is starting to get a little weird at this time. You know, it's nothing crazy. It's just he's starting to get a little eccentric in the hairstyle. You know?
Oh, I see. We need a hair-based timeline here. Understand.
Exactly.
It's kind of like a half mullet looking thing, I think, maybe?
Yeah,
Mid-60s,
like,
early
you know,
60s.
He's going for a more modern look, shall we say. It's kind of like a hair helmet thing going on. So despite the fact that the Spectors 3 do not have any hits, Lester Sill is pretty impressed with Phil. At this time, Phil Spector is doing the same thing to Lester Sill that he was doing to Stan Ross back at Gold Star Studios, which is he is figuring out what he needs. He's charming the pants off of him. And he's also kind of exerting his influence in that relationship to try to get what he wants. And what he really wants to do is he wants to get a ticket out to New York, because at the time, New York is where it was happening in the music scene. And so Lester Sill says, hey, I got these two proteges, Lieber and Stoller. Why don't you go out there and start working with those two guys? And he moves out to New York and goes to work in the Brill Building. We've talked about the Brill Building a whole bunch, but it really defined a lot of that sound of like the late 50s, early 60s. This was a building on Broadway where songwriters worked out of this building. These are professional songwriters. They are writing songs for other people to record. And this was where a lot of the action was. And frankly, you know, they talk about the Brill Building sound. Most of those songs weren't written in the Brill Building. They were written other places in New York and other places in the country. But the Brill Building was setting the template for the sound that people were listening to on the jukeboxes. And that's what the young people wanted to hear. So he gets out to New York and he starts getting in good with all the songwriters in the building, which is a very smart thing to do. He basically comes in and he says, I understand that without good material, none of this shit's going to work. So I'm going to find the best songwriters and I'm going to get in good with them. And again, use that dead behind the eyes psychopath charm that he has to get in good with these songwriting teams.
He's a smart businessman. Like, I mean, if you were to map this out on paper, like he's doing all the right things.
Absolutely. And by the time that he is 20, less than a year after showing up in New York, he is considered the best producer in the New York music scene. And he has produced 3 number 1 hits just in that first year in New York.
Damn.
He's really effing good at what he does.
I do think it's amazing to consider. It's one thing to be an experimenter and to be confident in the studio and be trying a bunch of things, but for that also to line up with what really works on the public consciousness, that is kind of a 1 in a million chance, right?
That style kind of takes over kind of a waning 1930s and 40s orchestra music that was kind of getting out of fashion by the early to mid 50s. And so I could see how it kind of fills a gap.
Oh, it's a good point. It's a throwback, even at that time.
Yeah.
Well, but what he was doing that was really smart is he is taking the recording and arrangement techniques that had been used in these 30s and 40s songs that they couldn't do great sound capture on those. So you really weren't getting the full effect of what those arrangements were. And he's putting those arrangements on modern songs with modern subject matter that young people want to listen to. And so it's kind of this like fully realized vision of what they were trying to get and probably what it actually sounded like if you were sitting in the room when they were recording in the 30s and 40s. And he finds a way to make that sound actually show up on the tape and then put young, mostly girl groups on there singing about boyfriends and love and stuff like that. And it's like really popular. It is a perfect recipe to capture the imagination of this burgeoning teenage class that has a lot of buying power and a lot of clout in America. So again, Lester Sill, he's not a big name in the music industry because he's a fucking idiot. He is like, hey, Phil Spector is doing a great job here. I'm worried that I'm going to lose him. And so I'm going to set up a new record label. And it's going to be a partnership between myself and Phil, Phyllis Records, Phyllis, however the hell you pronounce it. It's Phil and Lester put together.
Oh, Phil and Les. I kept looking at it as Phillies, like Philadelphia Phillies.
Yeah.
The second L looks like an I, so thank you for clarifying.
So let's recap here. Spector is riding high. At 17, he wrote a hit in LA, used that to get in good with a big power player named Lester Sill, married a woman who by all accounts was way out of his league, gets in at the epicenter of music in the Brill Building in New York. Within a year has risen to the top of that market and now has a partnership in a new record label, which means that he is going to have complete creative control when he is in the studio and the ability to create and promote whatever acts he wants. And the first act that he wants to promote is a New York-based girl group called The Crystals. And the first single that Phyllis Records produces is There's No Other Like My Baby by The Crystals. And it ends up getting to number 20 on the charts. Not number 1, but number 20 for the debut single for your record label and for a new girl group on the scene. That's pretty damn good.
There must be some sort of like relation between like these types of bands and then like the start of like Motown Records, you know, because it seems like this almost transitions to like early soul.
Yeah, it's just like lots of girls and like lots of young black women singing songs that are involving a lot of harmony, but usually one lead singer and a lot of backup harmonies. And yeah, I can see it kind of comes out of doo-wop and kind of turns into this, and then it turns into Motown. Certainly, yeah. There's definitely a direct lineage there.
Is it like Stax, or is that, what's that one record label that had like, because he had his band, right? He had his group, what I forget what they're called, like the Hitmakers or
The Wrecking Crew.
The Wrecking Crew. That was Phil Spector, right?
Yes.
And then didn't like Stax or whatever it was called have their own? Weren't there different versions of like the Wrecking Crew, or is it?
Yeah, there were these different house bands and these different studios around the country. Stax is the one that was in Memphis, right?
Memphis, right. But that was after this. My thought is just that if you think about this like plan, putting together this nasty group to kind of be a go-to employed backing band for all these hit songs also is like kind of adds to this kind of business savviness. I'm not sure how long that was done before him, but it's kind of like an interesting, I guess, technique if he was the one who started it.
Well, they would always have call sheets, you know?
Yeah, didn't the Wrecking Crew just kind of happen organically? I mean, if you start being on hit song after hit song, I think things coalesce quickly from there.
Yeah, it's more like, I guess it's more like an organic thing than like a entrepreneurial idea that he came up with, right? I guess that makes more sense.
It wasn't like, all right, here's your membership card to the Wrecking Crew. It was just your name keeps getting moved up and up and up on the call list.
Sure,
and
okay.
On Phil Spector's call list, you know, first 15 guys are getting called in to make a record. So anyway, he releases There's No Other Like My Baby, gets the number 20 on the charts. It's pretty good. Everyone must be pretty happy, except I imagine the Crystals, who Spector does not pay for their work on this song.
Jeez.
Now, despite that, the Crystals, they continue to work with Phil Spector, including on this album, and he produces several other singles and other albums and hits for them. He makes them one of the pioneering acts of this sort of girl group era of the early 60s. And I thought it was very funny. One of the songs that he recorded and produced for them, which was not really a hit, but it wasn't a flop, was called He Hit Me and It Felt Like a Kiss.
Oh my God.
Which is maybe the most unfortunately titled song I think ever. And then I dug in even further, and I was very upset to learn that was written by Jerry Goffin and Carole King. And it's like, Carole, what are you doing?
She's trying to get paid as a 20-year-old in New York. That's what she was doing.
Yeah, I don't know if they were trying to shock there. I think it was maybe more like, he loves me so much, he slaps me around, you know?
And it felt like a kiss.
Well, a modern take would be that that's from the perspective of an abused woman who actually kind of feels that way.
Yeah, I guess there's layers to this shit. Speaking of abuse, let's talk about some more childhood Christmas memories. We already talked about some Christmas gifts. I'm curious if you guys had any like weird familial Christmas traditions that went on in any of your households.
My family's not big on tradition or really celebrating, but I do recall, and perhaps all listeners have this experience, that everything about Christmas, the level of excitement for kids awaiting Christmas is so insanely high. And it was all about, we lived in a 2-story house, and it was all about coming downstairs. When could you leave your room and come downstairs? Right. What time was that allowed? And I think my parents said, 8 a.m. was the earliest we could do that, my sister and myself. but we couldn't leave our rooms before that time. But we were way too excited to sleep. The adrenaline was just like pumping through your brain the entire time. So I just remember her camping out on the floor of my bedroom and us getting up at like 3:30 in the morning to play Monopoly and Trouble.
Just
and
waiting
things like that.
for 5 hours.
Right, exactly. It was like sitting vigil for when we could go downstairs and open these presents.
So let me ask you this, because I feel like there's definitely two different approaches to this. One approach is you go to bed on Christmas Eve and there's nothing under the tree, and you wake up Christmas morning and all the gifts have appeared. And then there is the gifts just trickle in over the weeks before Christmas, and you have this like pile of presents under the tree that you're waiting to open.
No. Our parents, I don't even know if they wrapped presents. I think they would just make a pile of unwrapped presents.
Oh, jeez.
That would appear when Santa delivered them Christmas morning. Yeah.
Okay, it appeared Christmas morning. So I'm guessing no names on there, and your parents just like threw a broken pool cue in front of you guys and was like fight over them.
I would immediately see my brother's pile and be like, that's got to be mine. And then they'd be like, no, that's yours. That's not yours.
Let these animals fight it out.
Your brother got Rock'em Sock'em or whatever it was.
Yeah, right, exactly. So.
Well, for any parents who might be listening and considering this decision, I'm definitely for the do everything in that one night and have this big moment, visual moment for kids. I think that was a really exciting aspect of it.
Totally.
You know, I got to say, we do the gifts and have always, as a family, done the gifts are sitting out way beforehand. And I found that the speculation, like the amount of time that the kids just spend like shaking boxes and being like, Legos or like.
That's only going to work for a few more years until they get like the razor blades and like, start
Pinhole
slicing out
camera.
the
Steaming
wrapping
envelopes open.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
You know what? Honestly, more power to them. If they can get away with that, I'm all right with that. You know, Christmas is an arms race, right? Speaking of arms races, God, I'm killing the segues today. Because Phil has his own label and the freedom and clout to do as he pleases, he decides that what he really wants to do is he wants to go back to Gold Studios in LA, where he originally cut his teeth. And one of the big reasons why he wants to go back to Gold Studios is that the recording room in Gold Studios is actually very small. And he liked the way the room sounded in and of itself. They also have these echo chambers that you can do a lot of different reamping and stuff like that through the echo chambers, but he liked the actual sound of this small room in Gold Studios. And this period of time is when Phil Spector develops what is known as the Wall of Sound. Talked about the Wall of Sound before, but I had never quite dug into like all of the insanity that is the Wall of Sound. So the way that it would work, the Wall of Sound, you want multiple instruments playing the same thing. And when I say multiple instruments, I mean like 4 guitar players, an electric piano, an acoustic piano, and a harpsichord, all playing the same thing. 3 drum sets at times, all playing the same thing. And the way that the process would work is that oftentimes they would start with the guitars, and they would get like 4 guitar players in there, a mix of acoustic and electric guitars. And they would obsessively work out the guitar part. And then they would add the pianos. And if the piano part and the guitar part didn't work together, they went back to step 1 and they reworked the guitar part.
But it's not multi-tracking though, right?
It's not multi-tracking.
Okay.
Oh.
It is a bunch of people all playing the same thing, and then they're recording kind of like the sound of the room.
Wow.
To get this sound.
So yeah, the goal is to blend multiple things together into a single part in a room.
Yes.
All being played at the same time, but that ultimately your ear isn't able to differentiate between an electric piano and an acoustic piano necessarily because of the way they're spaced in that physical room.
Yes. And the way the microphone is placed to capture the different sound waves that are bouncing around accordingly.
We're talking early 60s. So we're talking 4 tracks max, right?
Oh,
Okay.
and then lots of bouncing down to new tracks over time, right? It was a very labor intensive process, certainly.
It was an insane person's process. Like, it's crazy. But it also is the kind of thing that you can do it on repeat in the same room, because if you know the acoustics of that room, it's a lot easier to
dial it in a bit
versus have to go to a different room every time, you know. Small room, you know the shape, you know where generally the mic sounds best positioned with the drums, etc. And so this is also when the Wrecking Crew starts to kind of coalesce as a thing, because think about it from this standpoint. Sometimes you have like 18, sometimes you have like 24 musicians all playing on the same track, and they have to get it right. All of them have to get it right every time. And so he had the call sheets of the people that he wanted and the people that could nail it every time and never make a mistake, which just kept getting called back again and again and again. And eventually got to the point where they're not calling number 2 on the call sheet unless, you know, number 1 is sick or something like that. And that's how the Wrecking Crew kind of comes to be a thing. And like, honestly, like thinking about all that went into this, it's kind of insane that the whole point of it is to sound like a third of the instruments that are actually playing. Like it's all supposed to blend together to just sound like one drum set and one guitar player and one piano player. But you have 5 piano players sometimes. It's just fucking craziness to me.
There's got to be a real holding off of some musical ego involved from these players too, and just trust overall in this process, because this has to be a laborious process for them as well. So it's really interesting to think the people, the musicians who were game for this from an early stage and kind of engaged with this insane process.
Yes, but they're also hourly, or they're getting like day rate. And so like, I mean, finish the song today or don't. I'm getting paid today. If we go back again tomorrow, I'm getting paid tomorrow, you know?
I hear you, but if I know anything about technicians, you know, there's a different one day is not the same as another day. I'm sure there were some complaints at the bar afterwards, nonetheless.
Sure. Absolutely. So it ends up becoming this signature sound, not only of Phil Spector, but it kind of defines like a bit of the hits of this era, this kind of wall of sound style of recording. It's very rich. It's very full, and nothing before it really had that same quality to it, because it is just so much coming at you, you know?
He was a big mono guy, right? Like when stereo recording came out, he refused. He thought it sounded like shit, right? And refused to record it anything but mono.
It can't be a wall of sound if you're getting a different thing in one ear than another, you know? It has to be just all at you all the time.
Yeah, without diving too deep into it, that smacks of, I already figured out everything for mono. I'm not going to start again with stereo.
Yeah. Well, and frankly, you're not wrong, because they actually say that the wall of sound technique was a operational template, and they did it the same way every time. And it was actually perfected on the recording of Zippity Doodah by Bob B. Sachs and the Blue Jeans in 1962, which I did not realize that there was an updated, hipper version of Zippity Doodah versus the one that was from Sounds of the South with like Uncle Remus.
The world was calling out for it.
But that was when they recorded Zippity Doodah, they were like, this is the sound, and we're going to do this exact same thing every single time. And then he did.
Well, that's interesting. You're pitching it almost like an assembly line, that once you go through the insane process of figuring out the room and what you need to do with mic placement and the process you need to take of recording individual takes, then it becomes like an assembly line where you can just churn out stuff that sounds similar.
Yes, if you have if you have a group that can execute perfectly every time, like the Wrecking Crew.
Right.
But I think a lot of the secret sauce is in the arrangement of the material. And so you do have to do individual arrangements, but they do know a lot of the tricks of the trade of how these arrangements are going to work together based upon that template.
And I just saw something by Brian Wilson that's along the lines of, when you mix down in mono, you're in control of the final product. When you give people the ability to control the balance and speaker placement, they're controlling the mix. And we don't want them controlling the mix.
Yeah, why would you give people what they want? That's terrible.
Well, I'm also just thinking, too, that Be My Baby, I feel, is the gold standard if you want to explain what the wall of sound is.
Oh, heck yeah.
Right. And that was released in 1963. And just for some context, same side of the country in LA, Buck Owens was recording like his 1962 album. When you listen to those two approaches side by side, Be My Baby must have been like when Star Wars was released, like just a new era coming out of your speakers. What is this?
Well, can I just say that Be My Baby by the Ronettes is not only one of my personal top 25 songs of all time, but I believe it objectively qualifies as one of the top musical recordings of all time.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
It is pretty flawless. And the way that it cycles through those chords is, amazing. It's so fun to sing. That song is so great. And yeah, for as much shit as we're going to talk about Phil Spector for being a total weirdo, for being a rageaholic psychopath, that man can write a fucking song and that man can produce a song. No question about that. All right, so Phil's got his home-based recording studio in Gold Studios. He's got his house band and the Wrecking Crew. He has a production style with the wall of sound. He's looking to make some more hit records, but he's actually too cheap to fly the Crystals out to LA for a recording session. So instead, he recruits a local backup singer called Darlene Love to record a song called He's a Rebel, which he then releases under the name The Crystals.
No way.
Oh, man.
And the Crystals don't know this until they're literally all in a car driving in New York, and on the radio it says, and here's a new one from the Crystals, and they play the song like, what the fuck is this? Yeah.
That's a power move. Yeah. You mean literally nothing to this operation.
Yes. Well, that is, I think, again, it goes directly to this raging ego that he has as a producer. He's like, whoever is on the track, that's not important. It's the fact that I'm producing it. That's what's important.
Man.
And, frankly, he's not wrong, because He's a Rebel was a hit. He's an asshole, but he's not wrong. So he keeps making hits with the Crystals, but in 1963, he discovers an act in a New York nightclub that's called the Darling Sisters. And he is immediately taken, both with the group and with the young lead singer, Veronica Bennett. He buys out their contract, brings them out to LA, and renames the group the Ronettes.
Oh, okay.
And this is going to be a time where we are going to go into our favorite segment on the podcast. This is Phil Spector by the numbers.
Yeah. Ooh. Yeah.
The first number that we're going to get into is the number 42. And that is the number of takes that Phil Spector made the Ronettes do of Be My Baby before he was satisfied.
Damn.
Apparently, he had them record it, and then he would play it back through a kids radio. And if it sounded good through a kids radio, he was satisfied.
Because it would sound good through most people's radios in their house or their car. And
I feel like that's a funny connection to the modern era, because I hear modern producers talk about it's got to sound good coming out of the iPhone speakers, like sitting on your desk. Because sadly, this is how a lot of people listen to music.
Yeah, it's smart.
Also, 42 takes is really not that many. I think I've done 42 takes to get one shitty drum track.
Really?
But hey, that's me.
I don't think I've had the wherewithal to do that. Apparently, it was a very stressful session for them where he was,
Yeah, I guess you're burning tape when you're doing it back then. Nowadays, you're just,
Well, also, it's full live take with singing. I mean, it's tiring,
bands going.
definitely.
Yeah.
I guess so. Yeah, I got a band
sure.
and all that stuff.
And you have a Muppet-haired rageaholic screaming at you that it's not good enough after each take. It's got to be adding to the pressure in the room.
Screaming at you, sometimes worse.
Yes, exactly. The next number that we're going to throw out there is 21. And that is the age at which Phil Spector became a millionaire, back when it meant something to be a millionaire, which is also right around the time where he's not going to shell out the money to fly the Crystals out to LA to record a song for them. He's still fuck them. Nah. Yeah.
Wow.
All right. The next number we're going to throw out there is 18. That is the number of top 10 hits produced by Phil Spector, which actually is a little less than I thought it was going to be. I thought he would have more than 18 top 10, but that's still a hell of a lot.
Yeah.
The next number that we're going to throw out is the number 4, and that is the number of demands that Paul McCartney put into a letter to Phil Spector concerning the production of The Long and Winding Road. They were, number 1, strings, horns, voices, and all added noises be reduced in volume. 2, vocal and beetle instrumentation to be brought up in volume. 3, harp to be completely removed at the end of the song and original piano notes to be substituted. And 4, don't ever do it again. Which was in reference to Spector apparently deleting a Paul McCartney vocal track without his knowledge or consent to make room for all of that extra instrumentation that he put on the Long and Winding
And that
Road.
was a stipulation where nothing the Beatles ever did was to be deleted. I remember that on our Abbey Road episode where everything was in a vault. So that is ballsy.
Yeah. But Adam, he's Phil Spector. So, you know.
The rules don't apply to him.
We did cover this on the Let It Be episode, and Paul McCartney was right. The Long and Winding Road without that stuff is better.
So much better.
Significantly better, yes.
John Lennon was quoted as saying something like, he took a pile of garbage and turned it into something decent, meaning Phil Spector.
John Lennon at this time was very able to be taken in by Svengalis, though.
Sure. Well, and he was being a pissy bitch towards Paul, basically, about their relationship was falling apart.
Go check out our Abbey Road episode, which I think is...
Yeah. Episodes number 150 and
There you go.
151, I believe. And the last number on our list is just the number 2. As in, Phil Spector is listed as the second most influential producer of all time, as chosen by the Washington Times of all publications, which I don't understand why that's even a thing. But I found that and I thought that was interesting because I couldn't find out who they thought number 1 was.
That's my first question.
But you know who is number 1 to us? It is you, the fans that listen to this podcast, man. I'm slaying.
Yes. Well done, sir.
We want to thank you so much for listening in every week. We really love doing this podcast. We hope you love listening to it. If you want to tell us what you love about the show, what you think we might have gotten right or gotten wrong, you can write us at 1001albumcomplaints@gmail.com. You can also go over and check out our Patreon page, 1001 Album Complaints at Patreon, where we will put up weekly polls to talk about the previous episode, whether we got the vote right or got the vote wrong. There's been some really great discussions from fans, adding a lot of context, adding a lot of great snark. If you like our snark, sometimes we cannot stand up to the snark the fans are
Coming hot. You're coming in hot.
Yeah. If you want to support us by giving us $5 a month, we'd absolutely love that. We got a lot of bonus content up there for you, including stuff like our 2024 recommendations, our song battle, our guilty pleasures episodes, and a lot more great stuff to come. So let's dive back into our story. Phil Spector has just signed the Ronettes. He said, hey, you know what? You're fantastic. Buys out their contract. They record Be My Baby. Boom. Propels the Ronettes into stardom. And it really caps off what a lot of people call the year of Phil Spector. So it comes out in August of 1963. And frankly, in 1963, Phil Spector could do no wrong. He was on top of the world. He dominated the music charts all over the course of 1963. And bear in mind that he was born in December of 1939. And so in 1963, he's like 23 years old for most of this year. It is insane to me that he is this young and he is this successful. He's got multiple hits with multiple bands, a new and audacious recording technique that not only is unique to him, but is like branded. It's like his own branded recording sound that people are like, that's that Phil Spector sound.
Yeah.
It also has this like almost uncopyable complexity to it. So he's dominating the airwaves, he's raking in the dough, and he's consolidating power in the music scene. So what does he decide to do? Blow up his marriage, as any good man does when he gets a huge taste of success. Apparently, he is obsessed with Ronnie Bennett to a degree that even the people around him at the time thought was like really extreme. And to Phil's credit, Ronnie was also super into him too. And they begin this pretty torrid affair that was so out in the open, it was like an active insult to his still current wife, Annette Marar. He would apparently completely gaslight her and say, I have no idea what you're talking about. Nothing's going on. And like literally was having an affair with her in an apartment in the same building that his wife lived in.
Good Lord.
And so they would like run into each other all the time and stuff. It was not cool.
That's rough.
Right. But he's become a hit maker. He's minting these newly successful acts. He's 23 years old. And for his next project, he says, I'm on top of the world. I'm going to do something that is deeply personal to me. Now, Phil has always been obsessed with Christmas music, even from an early age. He described these classic Christmas songs as having this joyful simplicity that highlights the exquisite songcraft of these early masters. I'm just fucking with you. He wanted to make a lot of money and decided that he wanted to do a Christmas album and was like, you know what? This is a pretty good way to get
If you at home could see all our faces, all our heads started to turn like, really? I thought he was a Jewish guy.
That's good. You got us.
This Russian Jewish immigrant really loves Christmas. So he sets up a recording session with the Wrecking Crew, of course, and he gets the acts that he has recently had these big hits with, the Crystals, Bobby Sox and the Blue Jeans, the Ronettes, and Darlene Love, who was that singer that he used to record one of the songs for the Crystals without their knowledge or consent. And I don't have any real information that this is how it went down, but I got to imagine he brought them all to the studio and he was like, hey, Darlene, this is the Crystals. And they were like, I fucking hate you. And she was like, oh, I thought you guys would be cool and just all be in the same band. I'm like, no, she's not going to be in our songs. So Darlene just records her own song or two, So they record it in late September, early October of 1963, use that standard wall of sound technique. The album is released November 22nd, 1963, reaches number 7 on the U.S. Billboard charts, nets Phil Spector one more hit in 1963, which is good for Phil Spector, considering what happens in 1964. So, he arranges a tour for the Ronettes, opening for the Rolling Stones in England in 1964, and it is there that he meets the Beatles. Apparently, the Beatles were really hesitant. They didn't want to come to America. Mostly because JFK had recently been assassinated and they thought that Americans were a bunch of gun-happy savages and like America was a dangerous place to go to.
That's changed, yeah.
Lucky that reputation has turned around. Never hear that while I'm abroad.
Yes. Nope, not at all. But Phil ends up talking them into coming to the U.S. And in fact, when the Beatles famously land at what is now JFK Airport in New York, you can see Phil Spector in the background of those pictures because he was on the plane with them when they came to America for the first time.
Damn.
Didn't know that.
So, ironically, bringing the Beatles to the U.S., Phil Spector introduced the biggest threat to his dominance of the airwaves. And honestly, he never really recovered from that. Starting in 1964, the Beatles own the charts for 64 and several more years, and the wall of sound style starts to fall out of favor. It starts to sound a little dated, and people are not looking for the type of girl acts that he was producing nearly as much anymore.
Choose your destructor, as Zool said,
exactly.
Right?
So he ends up still having some hits, most notably, and I didn't realize until this week that he actually produced the song. He did You've Lost That Lovin' Feelin' by the Righteous Brothers in 1965.
Oh, I can totally hear that. Yeah.
Well, and many people say that is the actual peak of the Wall of Sound. That was the Wall of Sound homed to a perfection. And that was kind of the high watermark for him. And after that, success never came the same way.
Not Pet Sounds. I mean, I know it was recorded by Brian Wilson, but it's still considered a Wall of Sound recording.
Well, Brian Wilson is probably the most notable protege, or protege from a distance of Phil Spector, who obsessed over Phil Spector. And recall on that Beach Boys episode, we talked about an anecdote where he played "Be My Baby," just the chorus of it, for 4 hours straight, like at the highest possible volume at his home theater.
Another person who maybe was not firing on all mental cylinders at the time.
It's like, what I need is a crazy fucking haircut, and then I can take over this town.
So we get to 1966, and there's a failed attempt to make an Ike and Tina Turner album that ends up stalling in the charts in the mid-'80s. Phil Spector takes that really personally because he's kind of no longer considered the go-to producer and hitmaker. The thing to bear in mind is that he's 26 years old. And he's being told by a lot of people that like he's peaked already and his sound is old and stale. He's like, I'm 26. I'm not even old. How is my sound old, But the biggest blow for Phil is that he always loved and craved the attention that he got as this rock and roll kingmaker. He dressed very eccentrically, again, crazy hairstyles. He would do outrageous things to get attention. He was also apparently a gigantic, just weeping asshole. And he was very difficult to work with. And on his meteoric rise to the top, had no problem making tons of enemies and burning tons of bridges.
He had one of Abraham Lincoln's canes that he went on like the Johnny Carson show or something. It was like a gold tipped cane.
What an asshole.
And he went on the Merv Griffin show and was just like being an asshole to everyone, including Richard Pryor, who was on the same panel.
Oh, I got to go watch that. All right.
Yeah, it's funny.
He was a fucking dickhead. And as his star waned, he kind of withdrew from public life more and more, and he became more paranoid and obsessive. In fact, he got so obsessive that his wife, Ronnie, that he ends up marrying in the late 60s, he was so obsessed with her that he would not let her out of his sight, even to like use the bathroom and bathe. He would insist on being there with her. And he essentially, in 1966, he goes into his mansion and puts coverings over the windows to not let light in, and doesn't leave for like several years.
Wow.
Total recluse. So, you got this guy who is kind of has a reputation as this like angry, crazy kind of psychopath. He is obsessed with his new wife, won't let her out of his sight, kind of a weird recluse, some substance abuse issues. So John Lennon's like, let's have him produce my new album. That sounds like a great fucking idea.
Right. Can we just chart the irony briefly that you said that the Beatles didn't want to come to America for fear of gun violence? Not only does the guy who brings them to America then commit said gun violence, but John is also killed by gun violence on the streets of America.
And as we're going to get to later in the story, also almost killed by Phil
Jesus
Spector
Christ.
at one point for gun violence. So he goes on and he produces Lennon's first solo effort, Instant Karma. And then that gets him in to produce Let It Be. Leads to a minor resurgence for Phil. He gets a Grammy for that. He continues to work with John Lennon. He produces Imagine. He works with George Harrison. He produces All Things Must Pass.
Wow.
He is back, baby. But he's also a fucking lunatic.
I feel like George Harrison doesn't get enough shit for glomming on to this Phil Spector thing. I feel like George Harrison in the canon is kind of untouchable as this great underrated Beatle, but why is he on John's side in this fight? I don't get that.
He's just drifting off of John. John does the cool things, and George is like, I'll do that too. That sounds pretty cool. So Ronnie and Phil had wanted to have children. They were unable to conceive. So they had adopted a kid named Dante.
You sure they were doing it right, Tom? After all you've told us about this guy, I'm not confident he understands sex.
I'm sure he told her that she wasn't doing it right plenty of times in that scenario. But this was the one of the things that I cannot even fathom this story. So they had adopted this kid, Dante. Dante is a couple years old. And apparently, for a Christmas present to Ronnie, completely unbeknownst to her and completely not in any way requested by her, he adopts 2 more boys and gives them to her as a Christmas present.
Wow.
And is like, here's 2 new kids. And they weren't like babies. They were like, 4 or 5 years old or something like that. And she's like, what the fuck is this? He's like, yeah, they're kids for you. There you go. Merry Christmas.
And here I thought getting someone a puppy was the worst possible present.
Here's 2 humans.
Yes.
That's nuts, dude.
So within 6 months of him giving these 2 children to her, Ronnie ends up leaving Phil. And the way that she has to do it, it's not that they have some big blowout fight or some intense conversation. Ronnie's mom comes over and asks if Ronnie has permission to go for a walk. And Phil doesn't really want to give Ronnie permission to go for a walk because he's super controlling. And she says, well, how about if she doesn't wear shoes? That way, she can't get really far.
Oh my God.
And the second they get to the gate, Ronnie and her mom just start fucking booking.
Jesus
Christ. She said she ran until her feet were bleeding. and never went back after that, and was like, I was going to die in that house if I didn't get out. I had to leave the children behind.
My God, that is insane. I didn't know any of this, by the way. This is insane.
This then results, by the way, in a multi-year custody case in which Phil Spector uses his considerable means to get full custody of the children, despite the fact that the children said they would basically never see him. They were raised entirely by servants, and Phil's bodyguard was like the father figure. But they said that, like, he would literally, like, they'd be like, you're gonna see your dad, and they would sit outside on the steps from like 6 o'clock at night to like 1 o'clock in the morning before the staff would come in and be like, your dad's not coming today, sorry. And they wouldn't see him for like weeks on end.
God almighty.
And when they did, he would be drunk and angry, and it wasn't a good thing. And yet he spent a small fortune ensuring that Ronnie did not get the children.
Start the Christmas bells in the background now as we transition.
Yeah.
Exactly. Ding, 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 ding.
And Paul
ding,
McCartney's the weird one for not wanting to work with this piece of shit.
Right.
Yeah, seriously. Well, apparently, at one point, he's in the recording studio with John Lennon, and they're having an argument about a song, an argument about Phil's production choices on a song, and Phil pulls out a fucking gun and fires a shot into the ceiling as a way to like end the argument.
Well, he wouldn't hand over his tapes or something. He wouldn't hand over the masters, and so he took them at gunpoint.
Well, that's a different story as well. I'm talking about he literally fired a shot to end an argument with John Lennon, and John Lennon famously said, you can shoot me, but don't damage my fucking ears, because you're in like an acoustically sound room with lots of good reverberation. You fire a gun off.
That's a great line. That's a great line.
That was a cool character. He was a cool character. So he's got a falling out with John. He works with the Ramones briefly, but after that, he basically goes into seclusion for the entirety of the 80s and 90s. He ends up meeting a woman, and they have 2 kids. They have a set of twins, one of whom unfortunately dies of leukemia at age 9. That's super fucked up. Apparently, another super fucked up thing is that he was a very devoted and attentive father to his biological children, but continued to completely neglect his adopted children and had no interest in raising them or being a part of their life.
The ones that he gave as a gift.
The ones that he gave as a gift, and the one that they had adopted before.
I think they were twins, too. I think the gift kids were twins.
Yeah, they were. It's super fucked up. Yeah.
Jesus.
So he doesn't really come out for all of the 80s. He's inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 1991. And that's kind of it. He really falls out of the public eye. That is, of course, until the early morning hours of February 3rd of 2003. Now, no Christmas episode would be complete without a tale of illicit tale of murder and cover-up. At approximately 5 o'clock in the morning, at his home dubbed the Pyrenees Castle in Alhambra, California, a gunshot rings out, which is heard by his driver, who calls the police and also states in his testimony that Phil walked out of the house with a gun in his hand and said, I think I killed somebody.
Somebody.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
The body of actress Lana Clarkson is found with a single gunshot wound to her mouth. Phil claims it was an accidental suicide. However, he has a history of being super irresponsible with guns. Larry Levine, who's the engineer who worked extensively with him to create that wall of sound, relates a story where he held a gun to the head of a musician during a session. Not even because he was angry, kind of just because he wanted the musician to shut up. And that was a good way to end the argument, was to put a gun to his head. So,
oh my God.
I am not necessarily saying that I 100% know that Phil Spector is guilty, but Phil Spector is fucking guilty of that crime. His ex-wife Ronnie also said that he would just like fly into rages out of nowhere and just be insane about that kind of stuff.
Well, this isn't alleged. He was convicted, right? So I think we can just safely say he did it.
He died in prison.
Yes. So he was arrested February 3rd, 2003. His trial doesn't begin until 2007 because he's rich and the justice system works differently for rich people. He's out on bail for 4 fucking years awaiting the beginning of this trial.
Hair just getting crazier and crazier.
Yeah, he looks like Gollum by 2007.
So he is eventually found guilty of murder and is sentenced to 19 years to life in prison. And spoiler alert, it ended up being life because he died in January of 2021.
Didn't make a prison album, sadly.
Who's the guy that shot Reagan that just got out of prison?
Hinckley.
Yeah, he's producing Hinckley.
Right.
Yeah, right.
I gotta say, Tom, I was feeling pretty annoyed by all this Christmas music this week. You've successfully washed all that away with this story.
It's a fucking insane story. I cannot believe how many people continued to work with him when he had a reputation for pointing loaded guns at people with very little provocation. Oh my goodness. All right, so with that tale of murder and woe out of the way, who wants to talk about some Christmas songs? We are going to jump back into the song that we played at the beginning of the episode. In case you didn't get enough of it, this is more of Frosty the Snowman.
It's like the classic beat, you know, like the boom, 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 psh, boom, 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 that is used all over the place. That's my first comment. The other comment I have is Frosty the Snowman should be an absolutely frightening character to sing about. Well, and like normalizing him as this like happy person that you're gonna like cry when he leaves. You know, it's like
First of all, I think this is one of the more successful tracks. The Ronettes are really what make it pop for me. And like we said at the top, when Ronnie Spector is singing from the Ronettes or when Darlene Love is singing, I think the songs really get elevated. Also, dude, the drummer is kind of getting it on this song.
I was going to say the 6 drummers that were in the room at the time were crushing it on this tune. Totally agree.
yeah, there's a drum fill between every like part.
Yeah, he's kind of getting into it. But, you know, actually the most surprising thing...
It's Hal Blaine, by the way.
Nice. The most surprising thing to me was that the song Frosty the Snowman had originally been recorded only 13 years before. It's not an old song. Like, I think we grow up thinking of these songs as freaking ancient.
Totally.
But this is a 13-year-old tune at this point. It's like us reinterpreting Katy Perry's Firework right now.
Man.
That's some great context. Nice.
I kind of separated the songs on this album into 2 categories. One of them are like Christmas classic songs, and the other one are kid songs. And this is a kid song.
Totally.
And that's why it didn't really do
The
it for me.
horse sound effect and
It's
stuff.
just a kid song, you know?
Yeah.
And it's meant to be a kid song. It's meant to be goofy. It's not meant to be good, I guess. And I don't know. This particular one I did not like.
I like it just fine. 2 more compliments. One is that they have that moment that we always love when the band says stop and the band stops.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
So compliments to that. And another observation of looking at the lyrics to these tunes, there are no direct references to Christmas in Frosty the Snowman. We're only talking about snowmen. There's nothing about Santa. There's nothing about anything else.
That's a good point.
Yes.
Yeah.
Evil anthropomorphized snowmen. They come to life and
Coming
just
to life.
lure a bunch of children into the woods with them.
Oh my God.
They cut out verse 4 where it's like Frosty the Snowman has scarred me for life. But yeah, I get what you're saying, Rob. Obviously, like Ronnie Spector's got a great voice and the Ronettes do a great job on it. I don't think that it's terrible in terms of what this song could be. I think it's a great version for what this song can be. I just don't think this song's got a lot of upside to it, personally.
I hear you, and you drew that line the way you drew it, which perfectly makes sense to me. But I would just say the line for me was about who was singing. So I have plenty of complaints about the other tunes.
Fair enough.
It's amazing. Everything about this is fantastic. I love Frosty. I have had a rebirth of loving Christmas ever since I had kids. I am all in. So let's rock.
All right. Actually, kind of no surprise there, Adam. You are incredibly wholesome. And I can totally see you being like the super excited dad on Christmas morning.
Frosty's a little edgy for me. Yeah. So I like really pushing the envelope.
It is fun to make, a snowman, I imagine with your kids. I don't have kids, but, when it snows, make a snowman, give it the, carrot nose and rocks for eyes and, a
so
scarf. But the idea of it coming to life.
It's
We
nightmare
should
fuel for you.
be terrified.
Yes.
Yeah. All right, we are going to go on to the next song on our focus list. This is the
Into the song. I don't have a lot of faith in your songwriting.
Quick, we need to do something.
What if they continue to happen at more than a change per minute clip?
The only
throughout the rest
weapon
of
in
the
your
song?
arsenal.
Yeah, there's like a song that could be like a Christmas song or like a Western song, depending on like what lyrics you
Again,
put to it.
nothing about Christmas in here. Only about sleighs.
Yeah.
And also, like, I always think of the sleigh being pulled by reindeer, not by horses. And there's lots of like, "Nyeh," and like horse running and sounds. And
Yeah, I think they're hearkening back to a time where people actually did use horse-drawn sleighs, you know?
Well, it could also be called, I was looking up the meaning of the word sleigh, and it really could also be called a sledge or a sled. I think it's a weird feature of English, maybe even American English, where the word sleigh only has a connotation towards Christmas for us. It never comes up in another context. But you say sledge, and suddenly you're in the Iditarod, you know?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it's basically just like a horse-drawn carriage, but instead of wheels, it has runners on the bottom, you know, like skis, basically. But Ronnie Spector's got that great voice. It's a little smoky. It's a little sultry. Kind of makes me wonder where that sleigh ride is going and what's going on under the blanket there, you know? I'm saying it's like Ronnie's like, she's got a sexy voice. And so you're kind of like, oh, yeah.
I had a note that I went and looked up the Ronettes, and man, that beehive Ronnie Spector back in the 60s. She was a looker, man.
Yeah.
New fantasy unlocked.
Yes. Well, I've got the sleigh ride now with Ronnie Spector. Forget about it. It's my Christmas gift.
Well, again, this tune is only 15 years old when they're making this recording. Like,
That's crazy.
you just think of these songs as being around since time immemorial, but no.
But to be fair, that also means that it was like 75 years ago was when it was first recorded. So that is pretty
Good
long
Lord.
ago.
Yeah.
I thought I read too somewhere that on one of the original recordings, they were actually like whipping a horse, like a
Get
live
the
horse
horses
to
into
get
the
it going.
booth.
No, I'm serious. I'm serious. Yeah.
The horses were next to the drummers.
Phil Spector's like, we need 6 horses and 6 whips. We go at the exact same time.
42 takes.
And I'm going to put a gun to each of their heads during the entire take of the song so they shut the fuck up because they're only at the beginning and the end.
The string work on this, it caught me off guard a little bit. I'm so used to strings when there's a lot of strings playing together, holding their notes out. But they kind of, when the strings are covering the melody, they're like really staccato. Yeah,
right. They're not keeping the bow on
Yeah.
the strings. They're lifting it to get that chop.
Yeah, and I didn't like the chop. I would have preferred something a little bit more smooth, you know, like a ski sliding over snow.
Hey.
Ooh, very
see?
nice. I'm all in on this one too. This song's amazing.
I like this song a lot. And Rob, you know, I like the key changes because I think the song doesn't have a whole lot going for it. And so the key changes kept me interested in it.
It's only like 2 minutes and 20 seconds as well.
It's
So
like 6 key changes.
yeah, it's a lot.
Let's go on to the next song on the focus list. It is Rudolph, the Red-Nosed Reindeer melody right at the beginning of the song.
Right?
I wrote down Sloop John B, which is like the
That
it's like the
reverby
same-
Telecaster thing. Yeah, totally.
Yeah. This one is the one where I think that the percussion is just cacophonous. There's just too much stuff. It's like they just got Sonny Bono in the back, just like 16th noting a wood block the whole time. Like
I thought they might have been castanets.
It's all of the above, guys. It's everything.
They've got all of it.
I read that Spector had a fascination with like Latin percussion.
Ah,
Bring the timbales in.
Right, exactly.
next to the horses.
I need more, damn it, more. 17 shaker players.
This is just a goddamn kid song again. And I said, my note is, it's like trying to put a silk suit on an unwashed hobo. You're not fooling anyone. We know what this is.
I find this one onerous for sure. I think the song is, I've never liked the song. And I looked up the songwriter this week. His name's Johnny Marks. He specialized in Christmas songs, and he also wrote the trash known as Holly Jolly Christmas.
Oh, God.
He's probably friends with the Monster Mash guy.
I mean, these are novelty songs. Like,
Yeah.
you got to take it with what it is. I don't think they were going into it thinking, well, all right, you know what? Christmas music is a genre, and if you get it right, you can be immortal. Because I was thinking, we think all of these songs are 100 years old, but just in our lifetimes, the songs that have appeared that have become classics, Mariah Carey's All I Want for Christmas Is You, that Kelly Clarkson one, ones that have become standards. So everybody wants to get in on that. So yeah, it's a
Cash grab?
well, it's a novelty song, but
I think the field was a little more open back then, though. I understand the capitalistic intent behind the songwriter. I just don't think it's a particularly noble pursuit. And I think some of the songs, including the Mariah Carey song, are very well composed pieces. I just don't think this one is particularly great.
sure.
Yeah. This was by the Crystals. They were the recording artist on here. I tried to get one from sort of everybody who appears on the album. So this was the song from the Crystals. Unfortunately, I can kind of see why the Ronettes were maybe a little bit more successful than the Crystals.
Absolutely. I feel like the
Yeah.
singing is undifferentiated here by comparison.
Yeah, definitely. Well, let's go on to the next song on our focus list. It is called Christmas, parentheses, big.
Personal favorite.
Hell yeah.
Agreed.
It's got that soul. It has this sort of like, you feel like you're in a city. It's got this weird like urban quality to it.
Well, this is the song that was written for the album. Like Phil Spector wrote this song with Ellie Greenwich and John Barry. So this is like a modern song, and it's a soulful, mournful song about like lovers written in the context of Christmas. And that's why I think it works really, really well. And it's not a Christmas song about chestnuts roasting on an open fire with a sexy singer behind it. It's like a song that's meant to be like this type of presentation.
Yes, I totally agree. This is the best song. This is the one. I felt like I was maybe slightly less familiar with this one. I don't feel like I knew every twist and turn of this song. Obviously, I had heard it before, but it gave me that really strong sense of 80s movie nostalgia. And I just think Darlene Love is the MVP singer just on this whole album. And this is her out in front, right?
She belts on this tune.
Oh, yeah.
Really kills it.
I had a timestamp at around 143 where she leans in and she gets a little dirt with like a pushed note, and it is so.
Still.
I read that there was a non-seasonal rewrite of this song called Johnny, Baby, Please Come Home.
Oh, really?
They're repurposing,
yeah.
trying to get a little extra mileage out of it.
And Phil Spector was like, at some point, I foresee in my future needing a robust legal fund. And so I can milk all of the cash I can out of this. All right. Let's go on to the last song on our focus list. It is Here Comes. Oh, it sucks so bad. Adam, tell us why you love it.
Well, first, Bob B. Socks is a great stage name.
No, it's not.
That's in the focus list, but I'm a little tired of it.
You know where this is? Second to last on the album.
There you go.
It's the Marty
The
Brooks
old
they
Marty
know.
rule.
It's like they knew. I think Bob E. Socks.
Yeah. Phil Spector was much better at producing female groups than he was at producing male groups.
Bobby Sox did record Zippity Doodah, you know.
He did. Yes.
All right.
Yeah. Which even back then, people were like, this is pretty fucking racist. But yeah, like I also noted that on a lot of these songs, you're used to hearing verse 1 and that's it.
Totally.
You start getting into verse 3 and beyond, they do not hold up. You're like, oh, I see why you just repeat verse 1.
There was a line about we're all God's children, and I just had never heard it before. So that might have been like the last verse of the song. And I was like, wait, what did he say? Because everything was reindeer and trees. And then I heard we're all God's children. I was like, oh, all right. But had never heard that.
Well, and the other thing, okay, we're all God's children. And you're talking about Santa Claus, a man who famously only gives some children gifts. He has a list that says, these are the children I will give gifts to, and these are the children I will not give gifts to. That's his whole fucking thing. And so, I don't know. Oh, we're all God's children except for the naughty ones who don't get shit from us.
To be fair, Santa Claus is playing off of God himself. That is kind of how he operates, too.
Yeah, that's actually a pretty fair point.
Right.
Instead of coal, it's eternal damnation.
He's got his own list.
Oh, good Lord. All right. That about wraps up the songs that we're going to discuss this week. let's get on to the vote. And I got to tell you, I actually have no idea how this vote is going to go whatsoever. I know one person's vote, so I'm going to save them. Okay. And I'm going to ask Marty, what say you, sir?
So, you're a kid, you get the Sears catalog, comes to your house and you start flipping through. You stop by the bra page briefly. Stop by the bra page briefly on the way to the toy page to circle all the toys and games that you want for Christmas. In my 1001 Sears catalog of the 1001 albums, I am not circling this one and asking Santa Claus for it. So that's a no from me.
Nicely done, Marty. All right, Adam, let's get it out of the way.
I am out of puns, but I am all in for this album. Listen to it. This is great. Phil Spector's a lunatic. I love this.
All right, Rob.
This is one of those rare instances, Tom, where I think I came in thinking it could be essential, and your story convinced me otherwise. Phil Spector is such a piece of crap that I don't feel I want to give him this honorific. I think you'll be okay if you do not hear this record.
Well, now I feel like a monster, like I'm supporting Phil Spector's cause of murdering people. But anyway,
I hope 1961's A Chipmunk Christmas album is on the list, because I'd give that one the thumbs up.
Well, Adam, if you're feeling bad about supporting Phil Spector, he's dead. And hopefully all of the money that is being earned goes to the children that he neglected for the most of their life and to the estate of the woman that he murdered. So
let's hope.
Yeah, let's hope. So my vote could potentially tie this and give the tie to the runner, which is a very interesting position for me to be in. Frankly, a cash grab from a notorious psychopath is not going to make it on the list for me. I'm sorry. I don't see that there's any artistic integrity behind any of this. I hate the songs. I hate the presentation by and large. I think Darlene Love, I will listen to some more of her stuff. She's got a great voice, but you can skip this because even if you never actively choose to listen to this, if you happen to walk by any device playing media between now and the end of the year, you're going to hear a good portion of this album, or at least the good parts of this album. And good is in gigantic air quotes. So there you have it. Not on the list. I'm sorry to the Ronettes. I'm sorry to the Crystals. Bobby Sox, you had to know this one was coming. You're not making it on any list. Not sorry to Phil Spector. You're a goddamn psychopath. All right. We just have a few things to do before we call it a day. And the first thing to do is, Rob, can you reach under that tree and unwrap some mailbag presents for us? That was a little forced. That segue wasn't as good. I had better ones.
I'm all in on it, Tom. I love it. I'm all in.
You write letters to Santa,
That's a good point. Yeah.
Yes, excited to get into the old mailbag today. What we've done for y'all is we've rounded up our Joy Division feedback for today's mailbag. Of which, believe it or not, we got quite a few missives. So we're going to do kind of a lightning round here of Joy Division feedback. Very Christmas appropriate, right?
Yes, of course. Now, I hosted that one, so I'm a little concerned. I think I was probably the most critical, but let's hear it.
Yeah, your name does come up in these. So here we go. First, we have Brian in Seattle who writes, subject line, your outrageous critique of Joy Division's unknown pleasures. Body of email was quite reasonable, actually.
Yeah, there we go.
I like that. All right.
Next up, we have Sula from London who writes, Dear Adam, I'm with you. You got it right. I hated this week, too. So much so that I couldn't even listen to the whole episode. Even your gorgeous voice could not compel me to see it through.
Well, now I'm concerned that we're turning people off the episode halfway through. That's no good.
It sounds like you're turning people on, Adam.
Oh, well done.
Listener Jay writes, I was ready to be totally annoyed by your ignorance, but I'm laughing so hard I can't be mad. Granted, it is a hard listen, but iconic nonetheless. Tim from UK writes, I do not agree with your assessment on Joy Division, but you listened to and talked about Kid Rock, and so saved me from ever having to do so. I still owe you for this. And one last bit of feedback I wanted to read is that an anonymous internet commenter took some issue with our UK place name pronunciations. Actually, a few people did this, but some were more dickish than others, including this one.
I hope we get the dickish ones.
Who said it doesn't take that much research to find out the correct way to say things. It shows lack of effort.
Oh, man. Well, that guy's wrong.
Good point. Astute listeners will agree that our show smacks of lack of effort, if anything. So, quickly, am I getting this pronunciation correct? Piss off wanker. And also, Merry Christmas.
Yeah.
Well
okay.
done,
Well,
Rob.
in all honesty, I think we've stated many times before that, like, there are things that we care about and there are things that we don't care about. Like, I don't care if we pronounce Robert Daimer's name correctly. Don't fucking care at all. I don't care if we pronounce the name of some little shit hamlet on a cloud river in the middle of England correctly. I don't fucking care. I do care if we get some of the musical facts wrong. So come at us hard on
Yeah,
this.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Feel free, UK podcasters, to pronounce it Lajola if you want. We don't care about that either.
What are you pronouncing? La Jolla?
I was thinking of La Jolla, California,
Oh, La
but
Jolla. Okay. Yes.
or any American place name. It doesn't. It's not really relevant to the information we're trying to provide. Do I sound defensive? I'm sorry. Anyway, write us whatever you think. Tell us what's on your mind. Send it on over to 1001albumcomplaints@gmail.com.
And then go straight to hell. All right. Thank you, Rob. This is really going to make, when I thank everyone at the end of the episode and tell them we love them all, ring really hollow after we just told them all to go to hell. But I have one more thing to do before we end this episode, and that is get our homework assignment for next week. I have the Albinator here. It has been looking at Christmas presents under the tree, and spoiler alert, one of them is a loaded gun. I have now pulled it out of the corner, and I hope that it will not assault me before it can spit out next week's album. So without any further ado, drum roll, please. We will be listening to... Hey everyone, just a quick scheduling note here. The episode for the record that the Albinator is about to reveal will not be released next week, December 30th. It will instead be released on January 6th, 2 weeks from today. We will be releasing a show of the best tweet-length reviews of 2024 next week on December 30th to give us a little bit of a break from recording over the holiday season. That episode is hilarious. I definitely recommend listening to it, but just want to give you a fair bit of warning. The next new record that we will cover will be released on January 6th, and it will be... this is kind of topical. The album is Live at Folsom Prison by Johnny Cash.
No.
Nice.
Yeah. He was not in prison for actually killing a person. He was just there.
No, he just wrote songs about it.
Yeah. That's what Phil Spector should have done. Instead of writing songs about loving people, which he clearly never did.
Wasn't Johnny Cash known for doing this? Didn't he also do one at San Quentin? Mm-hmm. I feel like that was his bag, right? Is to do albums in prisons.
Both located in Northern California. In fact, I'm not there at the moment, but my house is quite close to Folsom Prison.
All right.
Well, that should be a very interesting week. I mean, that's a great album. And Johnny Cash has got a very interesting story. So whoever has to research him, I'm sure you're not going to be at a lack of information about the life and times of one Jonathan Edward Cash. I don't think that's actually his name, but John E. Cash. All right. So we want to thank you all for sticking with us to the very bitter end. We want to wish you all a Merry Christmas. If you choose to celebrate, wish you all a happy Festivus. If you choose to celebrate that too. That reference might be lost on some people, but look it up. It's a fun holiday. So from everyone here at 1001 Album Complaints, I have been Tom.
I'm Adam.
I'm Marty.
And I'm Rob.
Boo da boo da boo 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 boosh.